If you follow my channel for a while, you'll know that I love a good 28mm lens. I personally think it's the perfect focal length. Well, the lens that I want to talk about today is a 28mm full frame lens with an f2.8 aperture, and it's this thin. This lens turns literally any camera that it's attached to into a pocket-friendly beast. And before you guys start yelling at the screen saying that you can buy literal body caps with holes drilled in them and they're technically thinner, this lens has a fully adjustable aperture, is rangefinder coupled, and also has image quality that is surprisingly really good.
The streets feel up, we're mixed with light, ghost town blown down.
This is the Brightin Star 28mm f2.8 lens for M mount, and it's honestly such a cool little lens. In today's video, I'm going to go over what makes this lens so great, what makes it not so great, and show you plenty of samples, so be sure to stick around till the end to hear all my thoughts. And before we begin, be sure to subscribe to see more great photography content. Now, this is the second lens that I've checked out from the company Brightin Star, who are relatively new to the scene and seem to really love making quirky, oddball lens designs. And I also want to say that while Brightin Star did send me this lens for the purpose of this review, all thoughts expressed are my own, and they're seeing this video when you guys see it. Now, I saw this lens pop up in a bunch of YouTube reviews a few months ago, and I was really fascinated by its design, which clearly mimics the legendary MS optical lenses, which are basically film point and shoot lenses that have been converted into a slim pancake shape for M mount by an artisan in Japan. And I believe they might have some original designs as well. But those lenses are very, very expensive, and they're also quite hard to get, with quite a long waiting list for a conversion. If you want to buy them used, they're around about like $800 to $1,000 as well on the used market. And so, unlike the MS optical lenses, you can find this Brightin Star lens for just $327, which for a full frame 28mm f2.8 lens that is as cool as this is, I think it's actually a totally fair price. Now, this lens features a fully brass construction, which makes it surprisingly very dense and well built. And it also has a stunning black lacquer finish, which should patina and show the brass underneath over time, matching like the vintage black paint leicas for aesthetics. The crazy thing about this, right? The part of this lens that protrudes from the camera is just 9.9mm thick. What? Yes, that is literally less than a centimeter. It is legitimately thinner than most M mount adapters, which really blew me away when I took it out of the box. I mean, look at how thin this thing is. For a full frame 28mm lens with like a fairly wide aperture as well, I think that's so cool. And if you're wondering what kind of lens adapter I recommend, personally I've had really good experiences using the Earth adapters. I think they're super well made and they're not too expensive, and unlike cheaper options, they don't rattle and make the lens feel like a native mount when attached. I'm not sponsored by them, by the way, I just think they're really good adapters. But what about the image quality? I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how cool the lens is or how tiny it is. If it sucks, you won't want to use it. Well, the good news is that the image quality is actually really good. Brightin Star clearly wanted to go for a more vintage direction when it comes to the way that this lens renders, and it's definitely a little bit soft at wide open at 2.8. And like the corners themselves have this real swirliness to them. Kind of reminds me of like a Helios 44, not quite as extreme because obviously that's a 58mm lens, but it has this real kind of vintage vibe to it, which I really love the look of it. It's not like a modern lens at all, and definitely don't go into this thinking it's sharp corner to corner at all apertures, because it's not. But it's got a lot of character, and just like the lens's appearance, I think the way that it renders images is also very, very characterful as well. And I think this is just an awesome lens for like street photography or like general day-to-day capturing of life. And the small size is awesome because it means that any camera you put this on, you'll want to take with you everywhere. And when using this lens as well, like I thought putting it on the S1R, it would just ruin it because obviously you've got 47 megapixels, but it actually works really well on the S1R, and I was really impressed with the performance of this lens. I think that this lens is surprisingly really good, and I don't think you would be disappointed with the image quality of it. Another thing that I love is that unlike other compact 28mm lenses on the market from other Chinese companies like the TT Artisan 28mm f5.6 for M mount, which I owned a few years ago, and it costs around about the same, so they're both about $350. You get a much brighter and much more usable aperture at f2.8, as the 5.6 on the TT Artisan lens meant that it was really tough to use it once the sun started to set, especially if you were using it on a film camera. And I can't stress just how tiny this lens is, and also just how unique looking it is. I mean, you mount this on any camera and it automatically draws conversation just due to its looks. And I think that makes it for an awesome and unique lens that has image quality that makes it not just a pretty face. So I just wanted to quickly talk about a technique that you can use to focus this lens more efficiently. So when I first got this lens, and I think how most people think they need to focus it, is if you sort of grab the nub like this and focus it, sort of pinching it like this. And what you'll find very quickly is that it makes focusing just much harder. So what I do is you get this part of your finger, the tip of your finger, and instead of holding it like this, hold it like this. And now, immediately, so much more control and so much easier to use as well. And then to adjust the aperture, you can get a little UV filter for it. And what I find is really cool with UV filter is it kind of gives you like a ridge to rest your finger on. And then it's super easy to just change the aperture like this. So when I'm out shooting with this lens, finger like this, index finger like this, and then sort of using the bottom of it and kind of put some pressure on it as well. Just a little bit of pressure on the lens here, and it kind of just really smooths out the focus action. I figured this out yesterday on a photo walk, and it's made using this lens so much more enjoyable, because before, when I was kind of holding it like this, it's so delicate and finicky, and it just is not fun. Especially if you're holding it like on an M body, it gives you like a lot more of a stable platform to use. So yeah. There are some slight issues, and all of them are actually related to its size. See, for starters, the aperture ring is very easy to knock and accidentally change. It's not clicked at all, and there's no real way of knowing what aperture you're on unless you physically look at the front of the lens, because you can't see anything from like looking top down like you would on a standard lens. It does have a minimum focus distance of 0.7 meters, like all rangefinder lenses. So it's not the best, but it's also not the worst. Definitely better than some vintage lenses, which have like only a meter close focus distance. But yeah, the distance scale is pretty funny because it's pretty much useless. But I do like at least the distance scale is all paint filled with this really beautiful yellow and red paint. So I would love to see what this lens would look like after a few years of like solid wear. And this is really only a problem that is present when using it with a rangefinder camera like a Leica M, but because the lens is so tiny, I noticed I would actually like accidentally get my thumb in the way sometimes, and you could actually see it in the final photo. So this isn't a problem with a camera like a Fuji or a Lumix where you have a live view display, as you can see if your finger is in the preview. But yeah, when you have it on a rangefinder where you can't really see the final shot, you do need to be really careful, because I was actually surprised at how often my finger would just like sneak into the frame. And yeah, I mean, also as well, like, you know, physically putting this lens onto the camera can be a little bit tricky, but thankfully it does have like knurled grips on the side there. So it's not too bad. You just have to be careful to make sure you don't touch that rear element, because it's all, yeah, I think this is like as thin as you could make a lens like this. They've done a really good job with the engineering on this lens, and I'm just really, really impressed with just how well made this is, given the price and given the fact that Brightin Star is, you know, quite a new company and not the most original design, because obviously MS Optical has been doing this for a while, but very, very cool that they've made it a lot more accessible than having to go pay what MS Optical wants for a lens. I had so much fun shooting with this lens, and it got so much attention in person. I mean, I have not had this many comments about a lens's appearance before, especially coming from people who aren't even photographers. Everyone's like, whoa, what on earth is that lens? That is so cool. I think the image quality being as good as it is, and very vintage lens inspired, coupled with the awesome 2.8 aperture and very, very reasonable price. I mean, look, this isn't a bargain basement price lens. There was a lens I reviewed last year. It was the TT Artisan 25 f2, which was another one of those like cheap and cheerful lenses. That was like a $60 lens. The image quality on this is substantially better than that lens, absolutely. But it's kind of in the same sort of category where it's like a lens that's just really fun to use. Obviously the price difference is quite big, but you know, this is a full frame lens that was not a full frame lens, and this is totally usable at 2.8. That was completely unusable at f2. But yeah, overall, I would say that this is a really solid little lens, and if you'd like to purchase it, I'll have a link in the description. Well, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next week, and have a great day.